Chapter 9, Juneteenth. Up all night printing. At sunrise, Abooksigun took half his men to visit General Abo. This man's land larger than the rest, and do I see a man-made pond? It looks like we will be doing a lot of fishing around her. Dung said as his mouth watered. Abooksigun smiled, sounds good to me. They drive up the pathway to the main house. Abooksigun observes the terrain. There's no sign of technology around here, but there's plenty of animals, hogs, pigs, chicken, and look over there, that's an enormous garden. A voice could be heard over an intercom system. Captain, I told you. I'll call you and not the other way around. Get your ass off my damn property. And where in the hell is my damn son? You've been here, and not once did you bother to tell me about my son. Deabra looked at Abooksigun, scrubbing his shoulder. Segamatso looked and shouted, he has a gun. Rana said, I got this, and took off running. He took the gun from General Abo and tied him up while the rest walked up to the house. Dung walked up to the general and grabbed the man's gun, pointing it at him, and Nafisa, his guardian angel, appeared before him. No, he is a servant of Sabaoth. Before Dung could tell Abooksigun what his guardian had said, Deabra transformed into herself, and the general said, you must be the ones I've been waiting for. Abooksigun said, untie him. And introduced himself, hello, I'm Abooksigun of Tucson. Abooksigun asked, why is a man of Sabaoth financing the enslavement of Sabaoth's people? General Abo said, I don't finance anyone nor anything. All this is from royalties from my family's past business transactions. I was born into this business for generations they did. I wasn't really into money or riches. I was into people, and as I grew older, people only wanted to be around me because of my money. All my relationships were about money. Everything and everybody were about money. I have been with plenty of women, but I wanted something genuine, and then I met my wife. She was pure, she was genuine. We were just friends even though I was taught to treat her as a lesser because she was Wakatilian. She showed me what love is and can be. I admit in my younger days, I took advantage of those who only wanted me for my money. I knew by their actions, not by words, not by deeds but by their actions, and as I aged, it hit me, and I saw and knew what I wanted. I wanted peace, no lies, no deceit, just honesty. My wife initially got me into nature, and I transferred her actions into reality and found Sabaoth. But it was my family that ran this business, and my sister and I inherited it. When she died, I took her son, Tomas, as my own. I was willing to give it to him, for he was a reflection of how I used to be, not only me but many others around here. I was going to leave it and that world to him. When I found love, I mean real love. I didn't care about any of this stuff, but it was not my call. When I was about to leave all this to Tomas before he left, Mletsi appeared and told me to wait until I met his people and give it to them. And I would see my wife again. My first love, Shartati. General Abo looked at Dung with a smile. My son is around your age, and you remind me of him so much. His mother is Shartati. Like I said, she's Wakatilians, and I sent them off to her relatives down south. Walking toward a bookshelf, he pushes a button, and a small drawer opens. My beloved gave this to me long ago. He handed the book to Abooksigun. He looked at it, the Torah. General Abo smiled, saying, yes, and I have many other books. Before the Mayflower, Malcolm X, and many more. She taught me so much, and I love her for opening my eyes. Dung asks, where is she now? General Abo smiles as he thinks about his family, in Atlanta, Georgia, near a valley called Kirkwood, on 57 Howard Street. Her parents are Rupel and Cassie from the Floyd clan. I don't know what all of that means, but I'm determined to find out. I kept it and held it to memory until I left, and now that will be tomorrow since you are here. By the way, I'm not a general, and Major Un isn't a major. Neither of us has ever been in the military. It has always amazed me how these people love titles. Only Captain Jatame was a captain of that ship. Dung smiled, past tense, wasn't. Major unpassed not too long ago. General Abo shook his head. I don't know who was worst, Captain Jatame or Major Un. Dung shook his head and smiled again. Captain Jatame is another one who is no longer with us, and by the way, Captain Jatame murdered Tomas. General Abo smiled. Well, you can have this land, and now you have all three. As Abooksigun, Dung, and General Abo talked, the rest of the men walked around the property admiring the land and taking in the scenery when they came across a tiny shred filled with sky crafts they had never seen before. Old One returned after 20 minutes. Abooksigun, you got to see this. Everyone walked toward the shed, and General Abo smiled. Oh, I see, you saw my sky crafts. I call them mosquitoes, not much on technology, but I love to drive fast. My transportation to Atlanta. Admiring the craftsmanship, Abooksigun and Dung got on the vehicles, and the general politely said, they are not ready. I'm still trying to fix the generators. They are too loud and not as smooth as they need to be. I only want you to hear these things coming when it's too late. That's why I call them mosquitoes. Yael, Mletsi, and all their guardians appeared before them, saying, Sabaoth is pleased with your progress, but now you must take action. Take those in prison and perform the holy jeûne and teach those to embrace their gifts. You will have 12 years of peace. Afterward, there will be utmost violence, and all must be ready. Those who are not shall surely die. Mletsi turned to General Abo, saying, because of your faithfulness and patience, Sabaoth has given you a new name like no other. Abooksigun shall be your name from this day forward. All must be finished before you make that journey, and you must be enlightened for your patience and obedience. You shall find peace for the rest of your days. After enlightenment and the prison break, you shall leave, but you and your family must remain in Georgia until you unite with the people from here. Then make your journey to Arizona through Tallulah, where Sabaoth gathers his people. Nowhere else is safe for you and your family. Abooksigun takes time to recover from his day as the men shows him their gifts, and the sight of Mletsi has him in a state of awe. Abooksigun tells him about his father and mother and the gifts Sabaoth has shown his faithful followers. A thought crosses Abooksigun's mind. In a week, there will be a glorious celebration in the ghetto. It's called Juneteenth, and the entire city will be drunken, and it is the perfect time for a prison break, and we can just walk through without any trouble. They have now acquired the entire T3 territory. Abooksigun and the entire team made adjustments throughout the land the whole week. They combined the technology and surveillance equipment while Dung, Abooksigun, and General Abo, now called Abooksigun, made plans to overtake the prison. Hacking into the prison system, Abooksigun configured all security cameras and weapons to operate through a handheld tablet. Abooksigun sees Abooksigun typing away at the computer. I see you like this technology. I never cared for it myself. Abooksigun smiled. Well, it's part of my gift from Sabaoth to understand languages, and this computer is nothing more than a bunch of languages called programs. Telling the computer what to do, and secondly, technology is science, and science is like spirituality. You can't see it's happening, but it's there, and it's happening. The entire crew pitched in to make new garments for the people and created body cams and earpiece communication devices. The days had come and gone. Early on the first day of Juneteenth, Abooksigun approached Abooksigun and Dung. I made plans for you and your crew to have a stage near the end of the ghetto. It will be in front of an exit to the ghetto. I have known this area's secret passages and tunnels since I was a kid. The stage will be a front for you. Your men can exit and enter without complications. I will direct you from here using your technology for all codes and anything else that might arise. Abooksigun had a strange look. A stage? Abooksigun smiled. Yes, a stage is perfect, and I have been listening to you. And your men singing, and I'm very impressed. Dung's laughter erupted. You did say if your father could sing, he would gather millions more to salvation. Here's your chance. Are you scared? Abooksigun said, I hate you when you're right. Okay, let's do it, but you will be there with me. We're all going. They went to the stage's location, passed out clothing similar to theirs, and arranged the stage as to cover the secret entrance once the sun set. The people started gathering in the streets around 7 p.m., and there were different artifacts and exhibits near the opening of the ghetto. Abooksigun created a wall of pictures and 3D statues of historical events and figures close to the train station and near their stage. They were trying to conceal its location by placing things the people would not show interest in. Unsure who could be trusted on the day of the celebration, they gathered cases of wines and liquor from Abooksigun's cellar and passed them out all day long. Making sure not to get drunk themselves, they joined in the festivities. Stages were scattered throughout the ghetto, people sang, and plays were performed before the sunset. The entire area celebrated and enjoyed themselves. Abooksigun walked past an exhibit detailing the beginning of Juneteenth. Outraged at what he was reading, Abooksigun asked, Why do you celebrate Juneteenth? A man shouted, Who gives a fuck? We're off for 2 weeks. Whatever the fuck the reason is, I'll accept it. Abooksigun shouted, People hear my voice. This is foolishness. Juneteenth, also known as Jubilee Day, Emancipation Day, Freedom Day, and Black Independence Day, was a federal holiday in the United States celebrating emancipation from slavery and observance of the Wakatilians' culture. Originated in Galveston, Texas, commemorating the anniversary date of June 19, 1865, which was an announcement of General Order No. 3 by Union Army General Gordon Granger, proclaiming freedom for enslaved people in the state of Texas, the last state of the Confederacy with institutional slavery. You see, Abraham Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation, issued on January 1, 1863, freed the enslaved people in Texas and all the other southern states of the Confederacy except for parts of states still in rebellion. Enforcement of the proclamation relied upon the advance of Union troops. The remote state of the former Confederacy, Texas, had seen an expansion of slavery instead of an end and had a low presence of Union troops as the American Civil War ended. Thus, enforcement there had been slow and inconsistent before Granger's announcement. Although the Emancipation Proclamation declared an end to slavery in the Confederate States, it did not end slavery in states that remained in the Union. For a short while after the fall of the Confederacy, slavery remained legal in 2 states, Delaware and Kentucky. They freed those enslaved people by ratifying the 13th Amendment to the Constitution, which abolished chattel slavery nationwide on December 6, 1865. The last enslaved, namely the Choctaw, were freed. I am Choctaw, and my descendant, Willis Reynolds, originally from Indianola, Mississippi, was the last slave in my family. I notice that many of you don't know how to get along because of this slave mentality. I understand, but I can't entirely agree that many of y'all behavior toward each other is disturbing. I see it, but at times I ignore it, but it does bother me a lot. But as I was saying, during the civil rights movement of the 1960s, the nonviolent determination to achieve civil rights Black Juneteenth celebrations. But it grew in popularity again in the 1970s, focusing on African American freedom and African American arts. Beginning with Texas by proclamation in 1938 and by legislation, 40 years later, in 1979, 49 U.S. states and the District of Columbia formally recognized the holiday in various ways. Its adoption in certain parts of Mexico became an international holiday. The Mascogos celebrated Juneteenth, and these were the descendants of the Black Seminoles who escaped from slavery and settled in Coahuila, Mexico. A man shouted, "Maybe we need to start a church, then." Abooksigun paused, "That's a good idea." He continued, "As far as history is concerned, many things happened between what I have already said but regarding the celebratory traditions. It often includes public readings of the Emancipation Proclamation, singing traditional songs such as Swing Low, Sweet Chariot, and Lift Every Voice and Sing, and reading works by noted African American writers such as Ralph Ellison and Maya Angelou. Juneteenth celebrations include rodeos, street fairs, cookouts, family reunions, park parties, historical reenactments, and Miss Juneteenth contests. Juneteenth was the last Wakatilians' holiday in our old system of government, for we only had a few, like Martin Luther King Jr. Day, Kwanzaa, and Black History Month. The man looks at Abooksigun strangely. Let me get this right. You're telling me that we, as Wakatilians, got freed thousands of years ago, and we're celebrating freedom when we're slaves? He shook his head. That's confusing. Oh well, fuck it. Let's party. A drunken man walked up to Abooksigun. Why do your ass talk so much? Stumbling before he caught himself, he continued, and why are we celebrating this shit, and we're still in bondage? We're some foolish ass people. The man was about to vomit and saw a liquor bottle on a table behind Abooksigun. Hey! Pass me another bottle of that gin. Passing the man the bottle, Abooksigun laughed as the man stumbled away. Abooksigun called on the earpiece, it's time. Abooksigun looked at the people. I have been invited to perform at one of the stages. Come and let us show you how to celebrate the real meaning of Juneteenth. The people followed Abooksigun. He walked on stage, grabbed his crew by the hands, formed a circle, and bowed their heads. Abooksigun led with a prayer and ended with, "Let freedom ring." Then he said, "Let everyone say Amen," and some people in the audience shouted, "Amen." Segamatso shouted, 1, 2, 3, while clicking drumsticks together as he struck the drums. Old One started striking a keyboard. And a never-seen smile was on his face. The crowd cheered, and seconds later, the rest of the crew repeated, "Let's do it." Abooksigun walked in front of the crowd and sang, "Baby, take your time, come on baby, oh baby, take your time. You know you ought to slow down. You've been working too hard, and that's a fact." Performing "Take Your Time" by the SOS Band. Rana and Hafez performed "Soul Food" by Goody Mob. As the crew switched back and forth singing in different groups, the crowd was amazed and cheered them on. After an hour, they took a break. The rest of Abooksigun's men performed plays, and some crew members used their gifts to illustrate magic tricks. The people were amazed and happy. They returned to do another set, and a man shouted, "Tell me, who the fuck do you think you are coming here giving people false hope?" A tear came to Abooksigun's eyes, and he said as he looked at the crew, "Let's play a Kunsimbel's favorite song." Abooksigun sang, "I'm just a nobody trying to tell everybody about somebody." An old classic song by the Williams Brothers. He started singing other songs like "Mercy Me" by Marvin Gaye. When he was about to end his set, he saw the young lady on the train who had asked about his clothing and sang one more song. "Priceless" by Joe Thomas. Yeah, this feels like one of those songs. This my dedication to that shorty from the ghetto, so priceless. Old One looked at Abooksigun and felt her jealousy. After the song, Abooksigun walked up to the lady, and she smiled, "I see y'all wearing the same clothes now. You trying to make a fashion statement or start a trend?" Abooksigun smiled and said, "Both. You need to go get one before they run out. They are passing them out near our stage, if you want to get one." Dung shouted at Abooksigun, "Let's go. We got to get out of here." Abooksigun asked the young lady, "I'm so sorry, my name is Abooksigun. How are you doing?" The young lady smiled, "Hey, I'm Lishan," as she reached her hand toward Abooksigun. Grabbing her hand, Abooksigun smiled and asked, "How long will you be here?" She said, "All night." Abooksigun said, "I'll be back later. I hope I find you when I get back." She smiled, "You will." Leaving a few crew members behind to watch the stage, they recited poetry and performed magic tricks. Abooksigun made their way through the secret entrance. Dung was excited as he enjoyed the celebration. "Man, that was fun, we got to do that again." Abooksigun, with a smile, "Yes, that was fun, and that girl is beautiful, and you know what?" Dung said, "What?" Shaking his head, Abooksigun said, "That church thing is a good idea. There hasn't been a church around for centuries. It just might be what we need here. Dung said, Sabaoth gonna have us as America's most wanted, ain't nothing but a gangsta party, ain't nothing but a gangsta party, as Dung and Abooksigun sang two of America's most wanted by Tupac and Snoop Dogg. As they got closer to the prison, Dung stopped. Listening to you earlier, I never knew the Anakitas and Computans were slaves. Abooksigun said to Dung, yeah, the transition to African slaves happened after the Moors lost their grasp on Europe when China's fire sticks or firearms were invented. Kings like Agaja of Dahomey and his guards who were called Mino, or mothers. Agaja stands out to me because the Minas were female warriors known for their fierceness and courage. During the peak era of the European transatlantic slave trade, he raided and sacked all slave trading forts set up in the coastal areas of his kingdom by Europeans. King Agaja burnt everything down and blocked supply routes because slavery conflicted with his development. Europeans tried to get other African slave dealers against King Agaja but failed, but after being eager to gain firearms, Agaja agreed to resume the slave trade. European wanted a large shipload of captured and enslaved men and women from one spot. But since Dahomey was in constant conflict with the Oyo Kingdom or Western Nigeria, there was always a teeming number of Africans captured on both sides and given to Europeans in exchange for European firearms. Millions of these Yoruba descendants are found in Brazil, Trinidad, and Tobago because their population was wiped out. There are no black Argentines even today, but plenty of black Brazilians exist. Sometimes, one horse was exchanged for 15 captives from these battles. Or they got horses from the Hausa traders from the savannah or northern Nigeria in exchange for slaves, who were sold to merchants in Kano, who sold these persons to the Arab traders along the trans-Saharan trade routes. Europeans often miscalculated how long it would take Dahomey to gather a shipload of captured men and women. Slaves often exhausted the coast's food supplies, and thousands died of starvation. King Wegbaja of the Oyo Kingdom devised a scheme that often estranged descendants of enslaved men and women. He began sacrificing these men and women to a deity he conceived. He convinced his subjects that he was doing the captives a favor instead of allowing them to die of starvation. These were their enemies, and he told his people that the sacrifices would ensure the power of their kingdom over rivals like the Oyo Kingdom to their east, which the Dahomey people hated, and the Ashanti Kingdom to the west. This was the root of mass human sacrifice often attributed to the Dahomey Kingdom and voodoo. There were enslaved men and women from Kedu of the Oyo Kingdom who would express thankful relief when these European slave ships arrived and halted the sacrifices on sighting slave ships. But the Yoruba Kingdom of Oyo made Dahomey a tributary state of their kingdom and demanded slaves as a tribute to the Oyo crown. Dahomey broke free eventually and declared war on the Oyo Kingdom, which was eclipsed by the British and the French conquest. Europeans saw these bloodied scenes occasionally, saying they saved Africans from mass sacrifices. It's all in a book called Sins of Our Fathers, where the author wrote that many Europeans persuaded him to state clearly that the transatlantic slave trade was the responsibility of the African chiefs. In response to this, historian Walter Rodney said, as though, without the European demands, there would have been captives sitting on the beaches in their million-inch waiting to be chained into the slave ships. As Abooksigun got closer to the prison, they became quiet. Once they reached the shores of Napeague, New York, they were 3 miles away, with water between them and the prison. Abooksigun said over the earpiece, "The rest is up to y'all." Abooksigun said, "No problem." "Agata, Dame Ray, are you thinking what I'm thinking?" Dame Ray looked at him, "Way ahead of you." Looking at Rana, "Let's try something. It takes me approximately 3 seconds to freeze enough water to walk across. Carry me so I don't have to walk, just fast enough to make this process faster." Agata agreed to go behind them and reinforce it. Rana smiled, "No problem." Waiting at the shore while Rana, Agata, and Dame Ray created an ice bridge, Old One said to Abooksigun, "Don't get me wrong, but you are one of the most cryingest motherfucker I have ever met in my whole life. But you have a pure heart and you ain't no punk either." Abooksigun smiled, thanks, I guess, but imagine how much Sabaoth cries looking at us. Rana and Dame Ray made it to the blind spot Abooksigun made, and the crew gathered to the wall. They worked their way to the top of the outer wall and slid to the top of the prison. Once everyone made it to the rooftop, Rana, Agata, and Dame Ray built an ice bridge for their return, and Hafez and the rest of the crew destroyed the iron doors and cells. They went cell by cell and worked their way to the basement. They were about to leave when Letzi appeared, pointing to a door, solitary confinement, while they cleared out solitary confinement. Rana was the only speedster. There as Dame Ray froze the door. Rana, using his speed, shattered it, and an old man sat there and looked up, staring at Old One's knife. Ashoga? Old One looked at the old man. Do I know you? The old man said, I'm Kaimani, of the Tyrone clan, from Iobo. Everyone there was curious. Old One, do you know each other? Abooksigun asked. The old man, Kaimani, said, clever how you changed your name to Old One, Ashoga, king of Mali, the steel maker. It was your knife that gave you away. Old One raised his eyes. We don't have time for this now. We will discuss this later. Let's do what we came to do and get out of here. The old man's cellmate, a young man without legs, said to Abooksigun, I am Ethan. How can I leave here? I'm missing my legs. Rana said, that'll not be a problem. And took the old man to the rest and came back. As he returned, Hafez was there helping to clear out the rest of the men. They gathered all the men and guided them to the prison's outermost wall, and there stood a sheet of ice, and they slid them to the shoreline. Abooksigun called, now go to the computer room but send the rest on, except one of those fast guys. Abooksigun said, a speedster? Abooksigun laughed, yeah, one of them. Guiding them to the computer room, looking at the blueprint of the building as the two men appeared as dots, Abooksigun said, stop, that door on your right. All the guards lived on the island, and that prison was pretty much a world of its own. They make their own rules and run it how they want, so we need to hack into the computer system to prevent them from sounding the alarm to the, as you say, the bubble. Turn the laser cannons 180 degrees and build a heat-seeking force field of laser to prevent them from exiting the prison and island. Weld the door shut, dismantle everything, alarms, boats, and sky crafts if they have them, and get the hell out of there. Once everything was done, Rana carried Abooksigun to the wall where they were sliding down to the shoreline, and Abooksigun asked Old One, so, who's the old man, Old One? Old One had a look on his face Abooksigun had never seen before as Old One said to him, my family was the number one in making and creating things of iron and steel, and this knife has been in my family for centuries. I'm the last, at least, I thought I was the last of my people. Old One slides down the ice without finishing his statement. As he felt the ice across his backside, memories came to him as a kid playing with his brothers and cousins down a waterfall. Flashes of his wife and kids saturated his mind as he sleds to the shoreline with the crew and sees the old man again. Old One cries. He sees the thoughts of what the old man thinks of him and the honor he holds of him. Old One slobs like a baby. Abooksigun looked at him, crying ass nigga, Once we get rid ourselves of our demons, we can be human again. Demons like lust, pride, hatred, and selfishness prevent us from being humane. We become human, we become spiritual, godlike, and only then can we cry. Old One looked at Abooksigun, the old man is my great-uncle. Abooksigun shouted over the earpiece, there are some teenagers goofing off just a quarter of a mile from you. They saw you. They are heading to their sky craft. You must catch them before they get away, or else all this will be for nothing. Hafez quickly ran toward the teenagers and captured them all. What am I to do with them? Abooksigun answered, if you let them live, we shall go to war. If you kill them and hide their bodies, we have a chance to finish what we came here to do. Now, you tell me. After questioning the teens, the prisoners voluntarily killed them, tied them with stones, and threw them into the sea. The prisoners that could fit into the new garments made by the crew put on the outfits, and the rest were escorted to Abooksigun's home as the women made a big breakfast for everyone. Abooksigun and the Dirty 30 were so excited they could not sleep, so they all went to the Juneteenth celebration again the next day. Some prisoners joined them, and they sang like never before. Abooksigun got up on stage and started singing, "Yeah, this is for my brothers in the hood and the high risers, on the mansions with the maids." And the crew joined in as they sang, "The Best Man I Can Be," by Genuine, RL, Case, and Tyrese. Touched by the song, the prisoner without legs, Ethan, said, "Would like to do a couple of rap songs." Abooksigun smiled, "No problem." Abooksigun and Dung picked up Ethan, taking him to the piano. Ethan began playing the piano. "I done been in bad situation but now a nigga up now. I done been in bad situation now a nigga up now." Performing Bad Situation by Moray. The crowd cheered as Ethan and Dung sang Ghetto Story by Boozy Badass and MO3. Everyone cheered him on, and Abooksigun laughed, "Man, you're good, do one more." He thought for a few seconds and sang, "Yeah, yeah, yeah. You was my dog, you was my brother, you was my fam, you was my kin, all, or nothing." Performing another song by Moray called Switch Up. Abooksigun and Dung were impressed, "Man, you killed it." Ethan smiled, "It runs in the family from my great-aunt in Ireland to my cousins." Dung stopped him, "Hold on, Abooksigun's mother, Anaya, is from Ireland." Ethan said, "That's cool, my great-aunt was named Anaya also, the Queen of Ireland." Abooksigun pulled out his necklace and said, "This Anaya?" Ethan smiled, "Yeah, the same one, we're cousins." Excited, Abooksigun looked at him, "Come back on stage for the last song, please." The entire Dirty 30 was on stage, and then the music began, they played, and the crowd danced. "Get your boogie back down, y'all. Where's all the humping people at? Where they at?" as they performed their last song, Humping, by the Gap Band. The show was a tremendous success. The people had never enjoyed themselves in such a long time. They wanted more but now tried, and sleepy Abooksigun and Dung carried Ethan back to Abooksigun's home. Dung asks, "How did you lose your legs?" Ethan replied, "When I arrived here almost a year ago, I came ashore with both of them. They punished me slowly, first my toes on my right foot, then the left foot, then the rest of my right foot, and then the left. Then my right leg up to my knees, then the left." Dung asked, "Why?" Ethan said, "Not bowing down and speaking to the inmates about Sabaoth and hope. Some of my worst enemies were the inmates because they either hated the truth or didn't want to know it. Knowing the truth meant you needed to change. And I realized you could tell someone 1,000 times the truth, and they will debate it all the while that truth is happening around them, and then when it takes place, they will say, 'I didn't know.' No. You didn't want to know." Abooksigun, Old One, and Dung divided the people throughout T3. The non-believers moved to the ghetto. However, he insists they work together on the land for food and other essentials, saying, "You don't work, you don't eat." Abooksigun starts calling the people's names to move to the ghetto: Rainy, Sabrina. Lanzo, the Muslim from earlier, knew these people would die, so he walked up to the front of the line before his name was called. Abooksigun saw Lanzo but ignored him as he continued to call out the names: Tanaya, Alamai, Barakat. Abooksigun knew Lanzo was the man who got angry with him about telling the history of the Muslim and the slave trade and said to him, "I didn't call your name." Lanzo said, "I know it will be called." Abooksigun said, "I didn't create history. Get your happy ass back out of the way. You're supposed to die just because we disagree with history, and what makes you think people who live in the ghetto will die? If they do, it won't be by us. Motherfucker, you will kill for your people like I will just because we don't agree to some small shit. I'm going to kill you, please. I need motherfuckers like you. Plus, you misunderstood what I said anyways. For years, they have used psychological warfare to pitch people like us against one another. Like king and X. You might see me as king, all gentle and kind, and I might think that you are X compared to me, but you can show me your Dr. King, and I'll show you my Malcolm X side. Hell, even your name means godlike. It's quite simple. We're humans with our own personal relationship with our Creator. Who am I to say your relationship is not pure? I'm seeking out selfish and evil men. I'm not calling people to religions. I'm calling people to Sabaoth, period. They made us into beasts, and they profit off of us in the prison systems. Until I know what my Father knows, see what my Father sees, or unless Mletsi tells me so, we all shall discuss and make decisions, but I will have my input, but we all shall. My uncle Daniel, a very young man at the time, once told my father to kill a ship full of evil people, but my father realized that Daniel was right. Whoever said, I freed 1,000 slaves, I could have freed 1,000 more if only they knew they were slaves. Dung said, even I know it was Harriet Tubman. Abooksigun said, not necessarily. Both historians Kate Clifford Larson and Fergus Bordwich said the phrasing is inconsistent with Tubman's usual wording, and an author named Kem Knapp Sawyer said she didn't read nor write. They finished their conversation, and Lanzo walked off, embarrassed as Abooksigun continued calling out the names, Sintehu, Tuadros, Diara, Esatab.